So I want you to picture the dense shadowed woods of western Kentucky.
Right down near the Tennessee border, yes.
Exactly. It's the spring of 1973, and you're sitting in a VW microbus.
Which, I mean, in the 1970s, that vehicle is like the ultimate symbol of modern mobility.
Totally. It's this metal shell representing human engineering, safety, and, our dominance over the natural world. You lock the doors, roll up the windows, and you are supposedly safe from whatever's out there in the dark.
Supposedly being the key word there.
Right, because outside the thin metal doors of this bus, something is circling the campsite. And the sources we're looking at today describe it with just terrifying precision.
Oh, it's nightmare fuel.
Yeah. It's a 7-foot-tall, half-man, half-wolf beast walking upright on two legs. He has this massive head with crushing jaws, glowing red eyes, and this is the worst part 5-fingered human hands that end in vicious, curling claws.
That image, of the wild physically tearing into our technological bubbles, it's just the perfect entry point for this.
It really is. Welcome to this custom deep dive, by the way.
Glad to be here.
Today we are taking a massive stack of sources, ranging from ancient Greek medical texts and medieval maps to indigenous oral histories and modern internet wikis. Our mission is to basically unpack the global legend of cryptids.
Specifically those half-human, half-beast entities.
Right. We want to figure out what our obsession with these specific monsters actually says about humanity.
And that creature stalking the VW bus is locally known as the Beast of the Land Between the Lakes, or the LBL Beast.
Okay, so where does the lore for this thing actually start?
Well, the origin stories are completely split, and that split tells us a lot about the anxieties of the people who live in that region.
Okay, lay them out for us.
So the older indigenous lore comes from Shawnee fur traders, who warned early French explorers about this shadowy presence. In this tradition, the beast is the spirit of a shape-shifting Shawnee shaman.
Ah, okay, so it's a spiritual origin.
Yeah, but a corrupted one. He supposedly used his spiritual powers maliciously, like abusing his position in the community, and was killed by his own village while he was in his wolf form. Wow, okay. So as a consequence, he returns to the woods, permanently trapped in this grotesque hybrid form, just seeking revenge.
That mechanism is so fascinating. The monster is essentially created by a failure to serve the community, right? It's corrupted power.
Exactly. But then you have the second origin story, which comes straight out of, 19th century European Gothic horror.
Which is completely different.
Totally. The European lore claims a settler moved into the area between the rivers in the 1800s, and this man supposedly suffered from some unnamed genetic disease.
A disease that drove him mad, right?
Yeah, drove him, and eventually his isolated children completely mad after nightfall. I mean, they stopped going to school, withdrew entirely from society, and just vanished.
And when locals finally investigated the homestead in the early 1900s, it was just abandoned.
Right. So that European lore transforms the fear of the deep woods into a story of biological corruption. It's this anxiety that isolation from civilization will literally strip away your humanity.
But regardless of whether it's a corrupted shaman or a diseased settler, both frameworks end up with the exact same thing: a violent hybrid stalking the woods.
And these accounts definitely do not stay safely in the 1800s.
No, they don't. Which brings us back to that 1973 Murray State University encounter, where this lore collides with modern reality.
The VW bus story.
Yeah. So a group of college students is out enjoying a warm spring weekend. They have their bus, a campfire, just a perfectly idyllic setup.
Right up until evening sets in.
Exactly. One of the students walks past the tree line to, answer the call of nature. And he comes back to the fire completely spooked.
Because he felt something, right?
Yeah, he tells his friends he felt this heavy physical sensation of being watched. And he could hear something massive just sniffing the air in the dark.
And of course, the initial reaction of the group is to rationalize it.
Oh, obviously.
They try to convince him it's just a wild hog rooting around. I mean, the human brain constantly tries to force the unknown into a recognizable taxonomy.
But as the fire burns down, the whole group starts hearing the sound of something incredibly heavy, moving with unnatural speed through the dry leaves.
Just beyond the reach of the firelight.
Right. So they start sweeping their flashlights into the trees, expecting a hog, but they catch glimpses of these glowing red eyes racing past them.
And that's when the howling starts.
Yeah. The sources describe it not as a normal wolf howl, but something unnaturally loud, blood-curdling, and laced with this mocking, insane quality.
Like a human laughing at them.
Exactly. So they are terrified. They pile into the bus and just gun the engine. As they're fleeing down the dirt road, they look back and see this massive, shadowy figure running behind them in the red glow of their taillights.
And it catches up, doesn't it?
Yeah, as they slow down for a sharp corner, the bus takes a massive physical jolt. The students described feeling something incredibly strong grab the rear of the vehicle, physically trying to hold the engine block back.
That is terrifying.
They floor it, break the grip, and drive nonstop back to campus. And when they finally park and look at the bus, they find 4 deep gashes.
Wow.
Massive claw marks torn completely through the metal of the engine compartment.
That physical evidence left on the metal is just wild. But there's an even grimmer legend from the 1980s that locals still whisper about.
The RV story, right?
Yeah. A family was supposedly camping in a motorhome near Moss Creek in the LBL. And according to the lore, they were found horribly mutilated inside and around their RV.
The details and the sources on that are brutal. Massive claw marks on the bodies, shredded clothing hanging high up in the tree branches.
But the sociological aftermath of that 1980s story is almost as interesting as the attack.
Because of the cover-up?
Exactly. Local legend insists the authorities covered the entire incident up, classifying it as a random, unsolved stabbing.
Because they knew a monster would ruin tourism.
Right. The underlying claim is that local officials recognized a supernatural slaughter would completely devastate the region's camping revenue, so they quietly put up a locked gate and permanently banned overnight camping in that specific spot.
Which reveals a pretty deep cynicism about modern priorities, honestly.
Oh, it entirely.
But the imagery of claws tearing through a VW bus or an RV, it feels like a classic slasher movie trope. We put ourselves in these metal shells of modern technology.
You're supposed to be impenetrable.
Right. They represent our dominance over nature. And then the untamed wild violently breaches that boundary. So I have to ask, if this fear of the wild breaking into our safe bubbles is so prevalent here, where does this specific obsession with half-man, half-canine creatures actually come from?
Well, this fear is definitely not a modern American invention. The LBL beast is really just a contemporary iteration of a global ancient phenomenon known as Cynocephali.
Cynocephali?
Yeah, the term literally translates from Greek to dog-headedness. And the concept of a human body with a canine head has been documented for millennia.
Okay, how far back in the historical record are we talking?
We can trace this directly back to the 5th century BC.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, there was a Greek physician named Cynocephali who wrote a text called Indica. And he wasn't writing mythology, he was attempting to write a factual, empirical zoological report.
But he included dogmen.
He did. He documented the existence of Cynocephali living in the mountains of India. And following him, the Greek traveler Megasthenes also claimed to have factual knowledge of dog-headed tribes.
What did they say these tribes were doing?
The sources specify they wore the skins of wild animals, communicated entirely through barking instead of language, and survived strictly as hunters. They even had classifications for a group called the Hemicines, meaning half-dogs.
Okay, reading through those ancient Greek sources, I kind of have to challenge the literalness of these accounts.
Go for it.
Like, did the Greeks actually observe something they couldn't explain, or were they just fundamentally misunderstanding the cultures they interacted with? Because the sources note that the Greeks commonly referred to a species of ape, probably baboons, as Cynocephalus.
That's a huge piece of the puzzle, yeah.
And furthermore, when Greeks traveled to Egypt, they saw murals and statues of gods like Anubis or Dumatef, who had the heads of jackals.
Right.
But Egyptian theology wasn't claiming literal dogmen were walking around the desert. Placing an animal head on a human body in their art was a sophisticated way to communicate a deity's therianthropic abilities.
Their divine power to shapeshift.
Exactly. So did the Greeks just look at a baboon, look at a symbolic statue of Anubis, apply their own rigid literal taxonomy to it, and accidentally spark a 2,000-year global game of telephone?
Honestly, the historical evidence heavily supports that interpretation.
I knew it.
Yeah, the Greeks projected their own literal understanding of biology onto Egyptian symbolic art. They mistook a sophisticated religious metaphor for a zoological field guide.
That is such a huge mistake.
It is. But the mechanism of how this myth propagated is what really matters. Even though it was born from a cultural misunderstanding, the imagery of the dog-headed man was just so psychologically potent that it took on a life of its own.
It became an established fact.
Exactly, to the point where eventually the medieval church had to figure out what to do with it.
And the evolution of this myth in the Middle Ages takes a wildly unexpected turn. I mean, it infiltrates organized religion.
Yeah, consider the Eastern Orthodox tradition surrounding St. Christopher.
Right, because the modern Western depiction of St. Christopher is just a bearded man carrying the Christ child across a river.
But ancient icons in the Eastern Orthodox Church portray St. Christopher with the literal head of a dog.
Which seems completely contradictory to medieval Christian theology. How did the Church possibly justify that iconography?
So the hagiographic narrative, the official story of the saint's life, explains that Christopher was originally a giant from a tribe located somewhere to the west of Egypt. He was supposedly conscripted into a Roman military unit called the Numerus Marmeritarum.
And the Roman center always viewed the North African periphery as wild, right?
No, absolutely. Monstrous, even. The legend states, Christopher was a massive dog-headed, flesh-eating Cynocephali, a literal violent monster from the edge of the known world.
But then he meets the Christ child.
Right. He encounters the Christ child, repents his violent behavior, and accepts baptism.
The theology at play there is incredibly calculated because God grants him a human appearance as a reward for his Christian conversion, turning him into a military saint.
It was a highly effective piece of theological propaganda.
Oh, for sure.
The Church was essentially arguing that the sacrament of baptism was so powerful it could civilize a flesh-eating dog man from the savage borders of the world.
And if baptism could save a monster, it could certainly save the neighboring pagan tribes the Church was trying to convert.
Exactly. Now, some historians argue the entire bizarre narrative stems from a simple scribal typo. Yeah, a Latin text describing him as a Cananeus, meaning a Canaanite, might have been misread as caninus, meaning canine.
Just a typo that changes history.
Pretty much. But regardless of its origin, the dog-headed man became this crucial psychological tool for map makers and explorers.
Yeah, the sources show a clear pattern of this geographic projection. Like, Ibn Battuta claimed to have encountered a tribe with mouths like dogs on an island between India and Sumatra.
Marco Polo did it too.
Right? Marco Polo wrote extensively about dog-headed barbarians on the Andaman Islands. He specifically described them as cruel, lacking religion, and having heads like big mastiff dogs.
Even Christopher Columbus, centuries later, reported that the indigenous Taino people warned him about violent Cynocephali living on neighboring islands.
So it's like the edges of medieval maps acted as a psychological quarantine zone.
That's a great way to put it.
By constantly projecting these hybrid monsters just past the horizon, European and Middle Eastern explorers could contain all the traits they deemed savage-like, cruelty, cannibalism, lack of religion, in a neat geographical box.
Right. Labeling the people in the next valley over as literal dogmen definitively categorized them as unchristian and less than human.
Which provided the moral justification needed to conquer, subjugate, and colonize them. The Cynocephali was the ultimate symbol of the uncivilized world demanding to be tamed by the empire.
Exactly.
So if Western history used these human-animal hybrids as a psychological tool to represent terrifying others that needed to be conquered, what happens when we look at how indigenous cultures view their own regional hybrids?
It's a completely different paradigm.
Right. The sources detailing the indigenous Pacific Northwest perspective, and the most famous cryptid of all, Bigfoot, reveal something so fundamentally different.
The contrast is profound. In the indigenous oral traditions of the Pacific Northwest, the creature Westerners call Bigfoot is known by several names, prominently Istia.
Which translates to the red bear.
Right. Yes. And unlike the beasts of the land between the lakes or the dog-headed men, Istia is never categorized as a monster.
He's not a savage other to be feared.
No, not at all. The oral traditions view him as a relative, a deeply spiritual being, and essentially a protector of the woods.
And the day-to-day reality of this relationship described in the sources is striking. Isdai isn't lurking in the shadows waiting to ambush a lost camper.
He's an active participant in the ecosystem.
Right. The traditions describe him sharing the land with the local tribes. He forages in the same huckleberry patches in the mountains. He harvests mushrooms during the same seasons. He even drinks from the same snow runoff streams.
The elders even speak of him understanding the local language and knowing the songs of the medicine dance.
He's woven into the community.
Woven into both the spiritual and physical fabric, yeah. The epistemological difference here is staggering when you compare it to modern Western cryptozoology.
Because Western cryptozoologists treat Bigfoot as a scientific conquest.
Completely.
I mean, you see them on television heading into the woods with military-grade thermal imagers, night vision goggles, tranquilizer rifles.
To hunt.
Yeah, the entire goal is to capture a specimen, put it on a stainless steel table, dissect it, extract DNA, and force it into a biological taxonomy book.
Which is such a colonial approach to nature.
It makes the Western approach look entirely misguided when placed next to the indigenous perspective. So, does the indigenous view essentially render the physical, biological proof of Bigfoot irrelevant? Because he operates as a living knowledge system rather than a biological specimen.
Yes, exactly. For the native peoples referenced in these sources, proving Istiohe exists as a biological primate is entirely missing the point.
It's not about a carcass on a slab.
No, his existence is validated through ecological relationships. They operate under a complex ecological framework known as Chitamanwit, which roughly translates to the Big Law.
Okay, so how does that law actually dictate behavior in the forest?
So, Inchitamanwit dictates the absolute interconnectedness of all things. It's this deep understanding that every action, every harvest, every diverted stream has a ripple effect that extends out to the seventh generation.
Wow, the seventh generation.
Oh, yeah. The law demands that you only take what you absolutely need, and you must leave enough for the soil, the animals, and the future.
And Issei embodies this law.
Perfectly. He is the ultimate caretaker of the forest. The sources describe him living entirely in balance with his environment, leaving virtually no trace, and consuming only what is strictly necessary for his survival.
So to the indigenous tribes, he's a role model for humanness.
He's a constant physical reminder of the correct relationship humanity should have with the soil.
So if we place these two halves of our deep dive next to each other, the terrifying werewolf tearing into modern vehicles in Kentucky and the peaceful huckleberry foraging giant of the Pacific Northwest, they actually serve the exact same underlying function.
They do. They are both mirrors reflecting human behavior.
And both of these cryptids emerge most forcefully from the woods when humans actively disrupt the landscape.
Right. The cryptid functions as an impartial environmental consequence. It reacts to our presence.
Looking impartially at the indigenous perspective on modern environmental issues, the sources outline a very clear cause and effect.
When modern society engages in severe environmental degradation like aggressive clear-cut logging, strip mining, and pollution, the landscape obviously suffers.
And when the droughts come, or when the root foraging season is ruined by unpredictable weather, or the huckleberry crops just completely fail, the belief is that Bigfoot is the one who takes away those resources.
It's not random bad.
Right. It's a direct consequence of humans operating beyond their means and violating the big law. The protector of the forest revokes the gifts of the land because the humans broke the treaty.
And the beast of the land between the lakes operates on a fascinating, albeit much darker, parallel mechanic.
Oh, with the bison, right?
The sources note that when government efforts were made to artificially manage the wild by restoring wild bison populations to Kentucky, calves would occasionally go missing.
Just vanish.
Well, they were found mutilated in the deep grass later, and local lore immediately blamed the LBL beast.
So it was interpreted as the cryptid asserting dominance over a human-engineered ecological project.
Exactly. When an RV parks in an area it shouldn't, the beast attacks. In the Pacific Northwest, encounters with Bigfoot frequently spike around active logging sites.
Where heavy earth-moving equipment is mysteriously tampered with or dismantled overnight.
Right. In both of these cultural frameworks, the cryptid pushes back against us.
Whether it's the beast physically tearing the metal engine compartment of a VW bus, or Bigfoot quietly dismantling a logging tractor, it represents the wild violently rejecting our attempts to pave over it.
They're essentially the immune system of the forest, mounting a defense against the infection of unchecked human expansion.
So bring this directly back to your own experiences as a listener. Think about the last time you walked into a deep old-growth forest. You step past the tree line, the sound of the nearby highway fades away, the temperature drops, and suddenly the hairs on your arms stand up.
You get that distinct, heavy feeling that you're being watched.
Yes. That specific psychological detail is present in almost every cryptid story. It's the defining feeling of the terrified 1973 Kentucky camper, and is present in the peaceful indigenous accounts of walking through mountain huckleberry patches.
It's universal.
So when you feel that sensation in the woods, are you actually sensing a monster with glowing red eyes hiding behind an oak tree? Or are you simply feeling the ancient, vibrant life force of a natural world that modern humanity has completely alienated itself from?
That realization right there is the ultimate takeaway from this entire stack of sources.
It really is.
It fundamentally does not matter if you choose to view these accounts as literal biological realities like undiscovered primates made of flesh and blood, or if you view them as rich mythological frameworks constructed by human psychology.
In either case, cryptids serve as a perfect mirror.
They reveal our deepest primal fears of the unknown, the terrifying things lurking in the dark just outside the safety of our campfire. But equally, they reflect our profound collective guilt over how recklessly we have treated the natural world.
So from the claw-marked engine of a VW microbus fleeing through Kentucky to the medieval maps deliberately bordered with dog-headed men to justify empire, all the way to the serene, huckleberry-filled mountains guarded by Istiae. These legends force us to look critically at our own behavior.
They remind us that despite our concrete, our engines, and all our technology, we are not entirely in control of the planet.
Which leaves a final thought to mull over. Let's imagine the modern cryptozoologists actually get their wish.
The ultimate hunt.
Right. Let's say someone captures a Bigfoot or a Dogman tomorrow. They tranquilize it, drag it out of the deep woods, and place it in a sterile, brightly lit laboratory or a reinforced zoo enclosure for the whole world to see. Wouldn't that completely ruin the magic of the wild?
Oh, it would permanently alter our psychological relationship to the unknown.
Perhaps these creatures only exist, and actually need to exist, in the deep shadows just past the tree line, because the very moment we capture them, they stop being a reflection of our own untamed wildness.
They lose their power to scare us.
Right, and they lose their power to check our arrogance and to teach us how to live in balance. If we drag the monster out of the woods and into the fluorescent light, it just becomes another animal in a cage, another tiny piece of the world we have successfully conquered.
Just another specimen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then what do we have left to keep us humble in the dark?